Hello and welcome to the new episode of Zyxel Tech Talk, live from studio in Aachen. My name is Horst Jagmeng and I'm successor for Tobias, who is at the moment not available and will listen this episode from home. With me in the studio is Christoph Kutz. He will
Good morning.
be
Hello.
Available for the technical services.
Yes, I will take place for my colleague Carsten or Tobias. So we're both new for Tech Talk.
Yeah.
It's both our premiere here, and we're excited to have you all on board. So we have a lot of attendees today. I can see that from many different countries, and I'm happy that we can provide you with some nice information about VLAN.
Yes, that is also the reason why so many people are interested in this subject. And here's the agenda for today.
Maybe some quick questions. So can you please give me some feedback in the chat or in the questions if you can hear us well? That would be nice.
That will eliminate
Perfect. Thanks, Dave.
Sound issues we
will anyways have a recording of this session. You can find it in our several portals like YouTube or the Academy. We will give some explanation to this at a later point of time.
Yeah, and if you have any questions about the VLAN configuration, please immediately send them when the slide is on the screen. Then we try to answer that.
If there's anything unclear in what I present, just feel free to raise your question in the chat and I will try to answer your question live. Yes. So let's start with the agenda for today. So VLAN is still a scary topic for many customers. We have noticed this in the support case. It's still in the top 3 topics list, I would say. So many customers are afraid of using VLANs or have never worked with it. So we will start with the very basics. I will give some explanation of what a VLAN is, how this works. We will talk about the different type of VLANs that our devices support. And we will also talk about some use cases here.
Yes, and very important is the lab session where people are really interested in seeing how it works on the device.
I've prepared 2 labs for today. So we will configure a basic VLAN setup for guest Wi-Fi in an on-premise environment. And we're doing the same in a Nebula environment to also compare both technologies and also to see or to make you see how easy it is in Nebula to work with VLANs. Again, the reminder, if you have any feedback or questions, just raise them during the session and I will try to explain them ad hoc. And at the end, we will anyways have an additional Q&A session for other questions.
Right. And you also can find material on the Zyxel Academy, which is free offer from us to show technology to you. There are also paid services to get a certification of this technology. And you will also find more details about that on academy.zyxel.eu.
Yes.
And for the questions, of course, you may put them in the chat now while we are talking. Later, when the video is online under YouTube, the channel of Zyxel Support Campus, you can put them in the command segment. Or if you are not willing to put that public, then write it to academy@zyxel.eu.
Yes, there are several options to contact us, and maybe just one point from my side to the Academy. So we have also used some material from our ZCNE online courses here, where also the VLAN basics are explained. And if you're interested in getting yourself certified as a Zyxel certified network engineer, feel free to visit our Academy. As a partner, you have partially also free access to our courses. And yeah, get yourself certified.
Yeah, the certification is of course often used to introduce yourself to a new job, for example, if you want to prove you're a technician in network technology.
Exactly. You will also have access to all the previous tech talks that have been done. I think this is number 10 or 15 already.
Yes.
So there are a lot of historical videos that you can watch to get more information about our latest technologies.
And of course, more to come. If you're a partner, you can also log into the partner portal. There's a single sign-on on all 3 portals, as well as the support campus and the academy. Just one login for 3 portals, and you can find all relevant informations in our online portals.
Yes.
Then I also have the information that there are partner events coming up. So if you're interested, log into partner portal and find the schedule of the events.
At least for Germany, there's something upcoming for May, I think.
The 11th of May, there's a partner day in Zyxel office. So that could be also interesting for people that are near our office, let's say Benelux or the like. So sign up for the partner portal.
Dutch and Belgium border are just 10 kilometers away from here. So feel free to visit us also if you're from another country.
Okay, yeah, that the subject is already something which teases our customers and viewers on YouTube with many clicks, and also the knowledge-based documents have been clicked many times. What is the interesting thing on VLAN, on virtual local area network like this?
You already said it right. So VLAN is an abbreviation for virtual local area network, or a virtual LAN. And the easy explanation is, with a virtual LAN, I can separate my physical switch into multiple logical switches. I have an example switch here. This is a GS2228. And we have the first 8 ports in green, and we have the second 8 ports, port 9 to 16, in orange. A VLAN would now basically be this. So I have separated my switch in green and orange.
Okay, but is it really mandatory, or can you just use a one configuration on different ports?
This depends exactly on the VLAN configuration that I want to do. So we have the possibility to use dynamic VLANs like MAC-based or subnet VLANs. I will explain those types in the later slides. We will just start for now with the basic explanation of what a VLAN is. So simple explanation, I split my switch into multiple switches.
Okay.
And devices connected to the specific separated switches can talk with each other, but not with the devices that are connected to the other VLAN.
That's very good.
This is a bit better explained in this slide here. So again, VLAN stands for Virtual Local Area Network. It divides your network into logical broadcast domain. I will explain later again what a broadcast domain is. And different VLANs cannot communicate with each other. I need to say to the last point that this is only related to switch. Of course, VLANs can still communicate with each other, but this always requires, at least for Zyxel devices, a router or firewall.
The router must then ensure that the VLANs are routed into the correct direction. So it's quite a very good opportunity to split your physical network into virtual networks and use the material and the devices you already have installed. And you can also put it on a later proposal. So your network is already running with a standard VLAN, and you decide to split it into new separate VLANs. You can do that at any time, as long as the switch is VLAN aware.
Yep. If we take the left topology here, we have a classical Ethernet network. All clients are here colored in green. We have a firewall or a router, and we have multiple switches. All devices are connected to the switches. There's no VLAN configuration, and every client can talk to each other client, to every other client without any limitation, and even without contacting the router. This is possible.
Okay. But still, the question is, what makes a VLAN so attractive for users? What are the basics of that?
Yeah, so the attractive part comes here in the right picture. So we can clearly see the separation here now. On the top, we have 3 clients separated in VLAN 10. We have 3 wireless clients separated in VLAN 20, and we have 3 other clients separated in VLAN 30. So those are all inside their color connected to different broadcast domains. That means only orange clients can talk to other orange clients or the router that also supports this VLAN. All light green clients can just talk to light green clients and not to the clients in VLAN 20. This again requires to have a router in place. I will show a different picture in one of the next slides. So to explain this routing process a bit better here.
Okay.
So quick repeat here. What is a broadcast domain? So it's a network segment which any computer or other device connected to the network can directly transmit to any other in the domain. Yeah. So the easy explanation is, now I have here green clients on the left side. They are all in the broadcast domain VLAN 1. And I have orange clients on the right side in VLAN 5. And a good example for a broadcast is the protocol DHCP to provide IP addresses within my network. Let's assume that we have a DHCP server here in the top right in orange.
I think you should put your microphone a little bit away.
Oh, it's too loud. Yeah. Is the quality better now, Bram? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I thought I was too silent because there was another question. Okay, let's continue with DHCP. That means let's assume that I have a DHCP server here in the top right, and this will provide IP addresses within my broadcast domain. Now, when I connect a new client to my Orange VLAN, I will get the DHCP my IP address from the DHCP server from Orange. The DHCP broadcast will not reach any clients of my green broadcast domain, VLAN 1.
Okay.
So it's completely separated.
It's a closed bubble.
If someone is aware of the OSI ISO model, the VLAN is handled on layer 2. So it's right above the very physical layer. So in a very early stage in the OSI model, this is already separated by VLAN.
Yeah, but it's a very strict regulation. So there's a lot of configuration and knowledge at the beginning, and it's quite static. So you can't put it dynamically without having special settings on the switches.
Yeah, this depends. So let's go to this example here where we have a classic setup. We have separated our own network in 3 different VLANs. We have our servers on the left side. They are all in VLAN 10. We have our clients in the VLAN 20, and we have some wireless access points. And let's assume there are also wireless clients behind that access points. We have them in VLAN 30. Now, per default, over the switch, VLAN 20 or VLAN 30 are not able to talk to VLAN 10. So there's no communication on layer 2 from VLAN 20 to VLAN 10.
Okay.
To anyways allow traffic from VLAN 20 or 30 to VLAN 10, we need to use our router. So our router also needs to know the VLANs that we use and needs to route the traffic from the VLAN 20 subnet to the VLAN 10 subnet. Okay. So the router is again a few layers above and is routing via IP addresses.
So at the beginning, you need a good planning so that you
exactly.
configure your VLAN settings from router to the infrastructure. And depends on which configuration, which VLAN type you use, it allows you to change the settings dynamically, or it's more or less static.
Exactly. I also recommend to any admin who wants to deploy a VLAN within his network that he takes paper and pen and draws his expected topology and plans everything in advance. It's very tricky if you want to change something later, or if you do troubleshooting, you have just started configuring something and you don't know what has happened now, and something is not working and you don't know why. So planning is very mandatory, and we recommend this.
Topology is often asked when there's a problem within the network and we are not able to find it out immediately, so that you can follow the topology to see where is the issue.
Okay. So let's summarize the benefits of VLAN. So we, of course, can increase the performance. Because we are splitting our networks in logical smaller networks, we can prioritize traffic, for example, internet traffic on our firewall. Let's assume we have some voice over IP phones in our network and they are all within the same VLAN. I now have the possibility to prioritize this VLAN traffic on my firewall to give them the prioritized internet access. Of course, I also can prevent my network if I have a bigger network with multiple switches and hundreds of clients. And if I separate this, I of course can avoid to have too much broadcast traffic within my complete network and limit it to smaller segments.
Okay.
Yeah, flexible network segmentation. As already explained, this more or less depends on the type that I use. We have static VLANs and dynamic VLANs that I will explain in the later slides. And with our Nebula Cloud Management, thanks. It's even more flexible. I will show this later how much better it is to configure your VLANs over Nebula compared to on-premise. So this also underlines the simple management. We haven't talked about network security yet. So of course, we also have the security factor here. If I have my servers, and for example, I also have my guest Wi-Fi in my company network, of course, I want to prevent the guests to talk to my servers. That's why I can have a clear separation and have it already blocked on a very low level of the OSI model.
And also avoid that somebody comes in with this notebook, plugs into a LAN port on your wall mount, and then have access to the whole network infrastructure.
Exactly. One big point is, of course, also costs. Imagine you need to separate your physical network into multiple physical networks, and you need all your devices twice. You can really save that by just using one big switch and separate your network into VLANs.
Yeah, and I think this is also the point where many people have interest in creating VLANs, because the actual infrastructure should not be duplicated. You just divide it into separate logical networks and save costs. So the planning is then also, if you plan a network, that you take a bigger switch, for example, with more ports instead of having multiple smaller switches.
I can also tell that all of our managed switches support VLAN. Even the unmanaged switches support somehow VLAN. I will explain this later, how you can also have a VLAN topology with unmanaged switches.
Yeah.
But I will come later to that. So let's come to the supported types of VLANs that we have on our devices. I will explain something to every point mentioned here, except the protocol-based VLAN, because this is more for ISPs to separate your traffic into VLAN based on the protocol, like PPPoE or IGMP. This is not used by many companies, but more by ISPs. So we will not focus on that. We will focus on the static and the dynamic VLANs. I will first explain what a port-based VLAN is, and also compare this with the tech-based VLAN, which more or less is the industry standard now. So nearly all customers who are using Zyxel devices are not coming around tech-based VLAN. So then we will talk about two types of dynamic VLANs, and these are subnet-based VLANs and MAC-based VLANs.
Let's have a look into the details. And for the viewers, if you are not following completely what we discuss here, you can always look into the recording that we will put on the Academy site. And also, of course, in YouTube on the Support Campus channel, you can always stop the video and check the screens that we are showing in the configuration files.
Yes, exactly. So let's start with port-based VLAN. So port-based VLAN was the earliest implementation of a VLAN that existed. So it physically divides a switch into multiple switches. If you remember the first slide that I showed with the orange and the green part, this is exactly it. So I tell the switch, okay, port 1 can only talk to port 2, 3, 5, 4, 6. And I can tell the switch, okay, port 8 to 16 can just talk to port 8 and 16. This is not that often used anymore, and I can also explain why. So this is how the configuration on our switches looks like. So we have that big table where we can define the rules, which port can communicate with which other port. On the right side, we can see here, we have the VLAN 1 and the VLAN 2. The idea itself is not very important here because it's just some theoretical thing on the switch. It's more about the port number. So we told the switch here, client connected on port 1 can talk to client connected on port 7. If you check the first column here, we have column 1 can talk to itself and to number 7. And of course to the switch itself. So it of course requires a big planning in advance, and
it is very static.
It is very, very static. So not a lot of customers are using it, and I can fully understand why.
Yeah. So at any time when somebody has the idea to change the port on the switch, then you often have a long time of troubleshooting and checking why is this port not corresponding with the client.
Yeah. And if you want to use this here, you need to tell your switch that you want to use this. You need to decide if you want to use port-based VLAN or tech-based VLAN. So this is something in the switch's main settings that you need to decide before you deploy your configuration.
So tech-based is in this example much better.
You can do a similar setup also with tech-based if you then mark ports as untech, but I will explain this later. So tech-based VLAN. This is the interesting part now. So it's IEEE 802.1q. Main benefit here is it can cross multiple switches. So if we look at our example here, we have switch A and switch B. Both have VLAN 10 and VLAN 20 set up. VLAN 10 servers on the left side on switch A can communicate with VLAN 10 servers on switch B. The connection between the switches is called trunk. The trunk is a physical connection between the switches that allows any VLAN to cross the switch. So it will just forward all packets containing VLAN headers to the other switch.
And it's established often with fiber or with DSC cables, with the connections quite short, to have a fast backbone on this.
Quick technical explanation how this works. So on the Ethernet frame, there's 4 byte. There are 4 bytes added to the header. Within this 4 bytes, there are 12-bit reserved for the VLAN ID. So in a tech-based VLAN, I can use 4,096 different VLANs. Even with the biggest topology, you would never reach the limit here. I don't know about any customer in my past year who has, who ran into the limit here of needing 4,096 different VLANs.
So now the package has got a postcode and an address so that you can send it from one location to the other as in real life.
Exactly. So this will also be the type of VLAN that we will configure in our later lab. Let's continue with the dynamic VLANs. First dynamic VLAN is the subnet-based VLAN. It requires that I, as an administrator, plan already the IP addresses of my clients. If I, for example, want to deploy a server and I know that this server needs to be in subnet X, I need to know this in advance because on the switch, I need to configure the subnet. If we take the left one here, 10.59.10/24, I need to know in advance that this client will be in this subnet. I can either use a static DHCP on my firewall or DHCP server and deploy deploy the IP addresses based on the MAC address, or I configure the static IP addresses on the clients directly. So this is absolutely mandatory to make this work. If we then have set up all our fixed IP addresses with whatever technology, DHCP, static DHCP, or just configuring the IP address directly in the device, the device can then connect to any port and will always be in this VLAN. But it requires, again, a very good planning in advance.
But you can also set, for example, a specific MAC address of a manufacturer to be in that subnet.
Then we come to the MAC-based VLAN. This is, I think, the better solution here. It classifies the device based on its MAC address. And based on the MAC address, it will join a specific VLAN. Best example, I think, here is VoIP telephones. If I know during my planning that I will use Yearlink or Cisco VoIP phones, I can use the first part of the MAC address, the OUI, the Organization Unique Identifier. I put this in my switch, and every telephone from this vendor that I connect to my network will automatically put in this VLAN.
That sounds easy.
For example, here I have my PCA. It is connected to port 3 of the switch. It has this MAC address and
starts with the same digits.
It's the same PC. It's the example just shows that you can put the device on multiple ports and it will always be in the same VLAN. Okay. Then we are already at our lab. So again, if I am too fast or if you want to have anything explained more detailed, I think we have enough time. You can just raise your questions in the chat and I will try to answer them. Horst is also having an eye on the chat, so if I miss anything, then he will inform me.
And please do not hesitate. There are no stupid questions. We can only give a stupid answer.
Exactly. So let's start with our lab. So this is a very, very basic scenario. We have a firewall that is connected to the internet. We have a managed switch, and we have an access point connected to the switch that is having one SSID employee.
That's very basic.
We just have one subnet at the moment, and every client that I connect to the switch or every mobile client that I connect to this wireless SSID will be in that subnet. Now, our goal is explained here. We want to have a guest Wi-Fi for our office, for example, or for our supermarket, and
cafe,
we don't want to change our hardware here. We don't want to purchase different hardware. We don't want to deploy other access points exclusively for this guest Wi-Fi. We just want to use our existing hardware that we have. And then comes the VLAN in place here. So we will add an additional VLAN 5 to that existing technology that will be exclusively used for the guest SSID. This VLAN 5 will have a different subnet assigned, 192.168.5.0, and
it has special SSID.
yeah, it has an own SSID on the same access point.
And that's the point where the security starts. If your guests then have access to the employee network because somebody told them the employee access with SSID and password, this VLAN is not usable. But the guest network, we will later configure that it's easily accessible and it has a limitation that it can only go into a specific area of the network.
Exactly. So let's switch to the devices. We will start with the firewall, then we do the configuration on the switch and then on the access point. Okay, we have our USG Flex 100 here. It is, yeah, let's say completely in default. And the first thing that we want to do now is we make this device aware of the upcoming VLAN 5. So we go to the interface configuration under configuration, network interface. Then we select VLAN and we click on add. This window should be similar to most of the guys because it is the same interface like when you add a virtual Ethernet interface or if you want to change your Ethernet physical interface. So let's start. We want to deploy our VLAN internally. That's why we select an internal interface. Then we need to give our interface a name. We just name it VLAN 5. Now it's a bit important and tricky here. As you might know that our firewalls are using zones. A zone is nothing else like a interface group. So I can group my interface into a zone, and with this I can control my security policies or also my routing. So I have added an additional zone guest in advance that is completely separated from my other zones, LAN 1 or LAN 2. If I would put my new planned guest Wi-Fi into zone LAN 1 or LAN 2, clients connected to the guest Wi-Fi would still be able to talk to clients in LAN 1 or LAN 2.
Same zone.
I will also show the firewall configuration for how I have done it. Then we need to select the base port. This is just the port where we have the VLAN on, the physical port. The switch is connected to LAN 1. That's why we select LAN 1 here. Next field, we need to select our VLAN ID. We have aligned on VLAN ID 5, so I will just enter the 5 here. The VLAN interface in the firewall needs an IP address. So the firewall will then also from the VLAN be accessible from that IP address. I will use this one as mentioned in the slides, and I need to define the subnet mask. So nothing else like in the physical interface. We also want to provide our connected clients with IP addresses. That's why we are setting up our DHCP server here, right? So we will set up a start address and define the pool size.
500 is a little bit big.
Oops, sorry, I want to use 50, of course. And we use our Zyxel as a first DNS server. Now, theoretically, the firewall configuration is already done. I wanted to explain a bit more about the firewall routes that I've set up here. Let's go to security policy control. So per default, everything that is not allowed on our firewall is forbidden. That's why I have added 2 new rules for my new created zone guest. First one is to allow guest network clients to talk to the Zyxel. This is important for DNS traffic and also to get an IP address from the DHCP server. So this is important. Second rule is the outgoing rule to allow the guest clients to visit the internet. As you can see, there's no rule from LAN 1 or LAN 2 to guest or from guest to LAN 1 or LAN 2. As this is not mentioned here, it is automatically forbidden because we have our last rule, default, any, deny.
Securely isolated.
So that's basically the configuration on our firewall. Wasn't too hard. Let's continue with the VLAN setup on the switch. So we have our GS20 to 20 here. Let me quickly log in. The interface is basically the same on all our switches. There are some smaller switches like the GS1900 series or some web or smart minute switches where you can do the configuration from a wizard, but I will skip this part and show how it is done manually. So advanced application, VLAN, there we can see our already configured VLANs, and we can see that VLAN 1 is configured per default, and this is untagged on all ports.
That's a standard VLAN.
That's the standard. That's the standard that we have on our slides here. If we come back, this. So this is the default configuration on our firewall and on the switch. Okay. What we need to do now is we need to make the switch aware of VLAN ID 5. For this, we go to VLAN, then static VLAN setup, and now we can see an overview of our ports here. What we need to do now is we need to define a name again. We name it VLAN 5. We configure the VLAN ID. And for this test scenario, I will just allow every port to forward the tagged VLAN 5 traffic to all other ports.
As fixed.
We would also have the possibility to select normal. Normal means that the switch can be forwarding VLAN 5, but doesn't need to.
Yeah.
This is used when you use dynamic VLANs like MAC-based or subnet-based VLANs to make the switch aware that there is a possibility that there could be traffic in VLAN 5 on that port, but the port is not automatically a member of that.
Okay. And the other thing is the port is forbidden for that.
Yeah, forbidden is self-explaining.
Yeah.
I think it just forbids the traffic from VLAN 5 on this port.
What's the meaning of TX tagging?
This means that outgoing traffic from that port is also forwarding as tagged.
All right.
So if I receive tagged VLAN 5 traffic, I also transmit VLAN 5 tagged traffic again. We would also have the possibility to make the port a member of VLAN 5 untagged, but we will not show this in our scenario. There's a good article in our help center explaining the different types here, and there are also use cases explained here. So for now, we will just focus on our lab here.
Okay.
So we need to click on Add. Now we can see that there is a VLAN ID 5 in the list. And very important on our switches, click on the Save. Click on the Save button. If you have a power cut, otherwise you will lose the complete configuration that you've just done. And that can be very annoying if you have done some very big configuration, have added 10 VLANs or something with specific ports, and you will just lose everything.
So
because
just applying doesn't save it in the
applying just applies the setup for the current session, but if you click on Save, it will be still there after reboot.
Yeah.
So now we have configured the VLAN on our gateway and the switch. Now we need to create our SSID with a guest VLAN.
There's one point, and then we will come back to the questions that we received in the meantime. So let's finalize this setting.
Let's finalize the setting. So regarding the access point, in this scenario, I'm controlling my access point over the firewall. If you would configure the SSID or VLAN on the access point, the configuration would be one-to-one the same. So it's in the same menu. So we will go to Object, we go to AP Profile, we go to SSID, and we see that we are already having our SSID employee. Now what we want to do is we want to create a new SSID. Let's call the profile guest. Let's call the SSID guest. And we also need to select a security profile. Since this is a guest Wi-Fi, I think we
must limit the access.
Yeah, no, I will set it to open mode, that it doesn't require to have a WPA2 key or anything else. It's just easier for the guests to connect to your Wi-Fi. Exactly. Just call it open. This is now assigned to the security profile. And I, of course, select my VLAN ID 5 here. That's it.
And this means the firewall now executes this setting to all access points.
Not yet. We have just created the profile.
Okay.
We now need to make the access point aware of this configuration. For this, we go to wireless, we go to AP management, we go to AP group. Since this is a basic default configuration, I have not renamed anything here. And now in this menu, we can assign this new guest SSID to the specific radios, 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. So we select guest here and we select guest here. That's it.
Okay.
So there were a few things that you need to consider and that you need to take care of. So it's good that would be good if you have done it a few times to also be confident then for customer setups.
Yeah.
I will now show in the next lab how it is done in Nebula, but let's check the questions first.
Is there a limit to the number of MAC addresses on MAC-based VLAN?
Yeah, is there a limit to the number of MAC addresses in MAC-based VLANs? I cannot answer this. I think that there might be a limit. I think we will come back to this after the session to you, Johan. I can currently not answer this.
I think the limit is basically also because of the IP addresses that you can assign
there's
to MAC
probably
addresses.
There's probably a limit. Same like that I'm having a limit of configurable SSIDs on my access points. I don't know the exact number, but I never ran into any problem with a customer regarding this. So I think there are several different MAC addresses possible. And it's not that you need to use a full MAC address, it's just that you need to use the first part. So if you have year-link phones, they all share the same first part of the MAC address and you need to set it up once. You don't need to put the complete MAC address, of course, in your switch. You can, but you don't need to.
All right.
Okay. What's the best way to implement a new Nebula switch in an existing VLAN network?
For instance, DHCP is only running in VLAN 10, and in this case, there's no DHCP in VLAN 1.
Yep, I will, Dave, coming back to your question, I will show this in the lab now. I will go through the Nebula setup for this. It's quite easy to have the VLAN set up on the switches in Nebula because it is already activated per default. So, but I will show this in the next lab.
You will see that Nebula is much easier.
Exactly. So coming to the second lab, we have the same topology again. We have our firewall, our switch, and our access point. Now all in Nebula, and we will just apply the same configuration now. So let's switch to our Nebula control center, to our test organization.
And again, if something is not clear, you can ask now. You can ask the question in the command segment of YouTube, or you send it anonymous or single, not public, to academy@zyxel.eu.
Exactly. So we're always here for you. So this is our Nebula dashboard. As you can see, we have our AP online, we have our switch online, and we have our appliance online. This is a USG Flex 100, I think. And we will start with the same, like on premise device. We will start making the firewall aware of the new VLAN. We go to firewall, configure interface. We will go to our LAN interface because this is connected to our switch. And we will add a VLAN interface. We will use the VLAN interface name, same like on our premise device. Port group is here the base port on the on-premise device. So our switch is currently connected to LAN group 1. That's why we keep it here. Here, we don't have any zones, but I will show the trick later. It's much easier than creating an own zone and taking care of firewall rules. I will set the VLAN ID. I will set my subnet again. And I will create my DHCP server again, same like on the on-premise device. Okay. We now save the configuration.
Very important. Also here, save
please
the configuration.
But here at least you get notified if you don't save and want to switch the menu. So this is good. So from firewall perspective, this is much more easier here to isolate your guest network. You will just enable the switch, and this automatically makes your guest network in VLAN 5, or makes your VLAN 5 as a guest network. That means that guests cannot talk to each other. And it also means that guests can only access the internet and not any other client in any other VLAN or LAN.
So there's no setting on the switch in this case.
We will come to the switch now, but you're absolutely right. We don't need to take care about switches in Nebula with VLANs. I will show you why. Let's go to the switch config. We have our switch ports here. This is the XS1930 12HP, a 12-port multi-gigabit switch. And if we just take this port as an example, we see that the default setting is allowed VLANs all. That means every port acts as a trunk port, and every port allows every VLAN.
No limits.
No limits. If I don't want to have this as an admin, I can of course change that, and I can change it like I will allow port 1, I will allow port 2, separate with a comma, and I will allow port 5 to port 10. Sorry, not port, VLAN. VLAN on that port. I can, of course, I don't need to do it per port. I can also do it for all ports. I can just use this first column here to select all. and I have the same setting here. I can then choose to allow all VLANs, which is the default setting, or I just say 20, or in our case 5, but I don't want to do this now.
Okay.
For the access points, it's also a bit easier than on our on-premise environment. So we go to access point, we go to SSID settings, and we see that we already have our employee SSID here. We will unhide all disable SSIDs here, and we will just use the second one. We will call this guest. So this is a name that will also be visible on the end device then. We will enable this SSID. We will also mark this as guest network. That means that connected clients cannot talk to each other on access point level, because you also need to consider that an access point is nothing else than a switch, but just connecting two different types of media.
So formally the layer 2 isolation.
Exactly, it's more or less a layer 2 isolation. Then we need to assign this SSID to the VLAN. And this is done here. You need to scroll down a bit, and there's an option, advanced settings, VLAN ID. We use VLAN ID 5. We click on back to come back to the initial menu. We now see that we have an open Wi-Fi here. Doesn't require sign in. We have our VLAN ID 5. You click on save. And that's it on Nebula.
That's all.
Much more quick, right?
So quite easy. If you have any questions about that, just send it in the chat window. Actually, our viewers are quite with what we explain here. So Nebula, in the former TECHtalk in German, we had the question, is this function available on Nebula only if I buy a license?
No, this doesn't require a license. Everything that I've done now is available in the basic pack. For some, I think vendor-based VLANs or Mac-based VLANs, I think it requires a plus or professional pack, but we have a nice article describing that. I don't actually know at the moment, but it could be that some advanced features are just possible with the plus or pro pack. Yeah, plus or pro pack, right.
So there's one more question.
Maybe coming back to Dave's question regarding handling Nebula switch in an on-premise device environment. I think it makes sense if you, Dave, raise a support request about that and get a look from our support team on your implementation. I think it's quite easy, but would be a bit beyond the scope for today's Tech Talk. Then we have a question from
Alessandro.
From Alessandro Pagani. What about hybrid environment with USG ATP with on-premise configuration and AP switches configured in Nebula? You basically do the same that I've done now. You still need to make your firewall aware of the VLANs that you are using in your Nebula environment, for example, for Wi-Fi or clients. So you always need to create the interfaces on your ATP or USG.
Yeah, firewall is important.
Genau. Yes.
Yes. Any more questions, just let us know. Meanwhile, we can just note that we have, of course, a new Tech Talk coming up, which is by end of April. Tech Talk is always available in the last Wednesday of the month, so in April. And this will then be done for VPN. And there's also one function that we are going to explain more detailed, which is VPN tunneling mode.
Exactly. So in current Corona times, and we have 2022, still a lot of people are working from home. And we will focus in the next Tech Talk, what are the possibilities for me when I'm working from home to connect to my company network. And there are several nice options besides the classic end-to-side VPN. Like you have already mentioned, remote AP feature or secure Wi-Fi. That means that I, as an employee, get an access point from my office. I connect the access point to my existing home network, and I can see the SSID from the company network, and I'm also in the company network without the need to connect to a VPN. This is very interesting, and we'll focus on this in the next Tech Talk next month.
And if the little virus doesn't keep us in our home office, surely the gasoline prices will do. So that should be a subject that we will lead among the whole year already.
Right. So if you still have questions that I can quickly answer, feel free to still raise them in the chat here. We will just continue now with our slides. A few more to go. Okay, this is an interesting question from Mr. Moser. What is the recommendation for configuring ports for end devices, computer, and no Wi-Fi IP? Set the PVID on the ports. Yes, this is exactly correct. So if you have a dumb or silly client, it cannot handle tagged VLAN.
Yeah.
So of course you need to make the switch port untagged. You need to, I will quickly switch to the switch again and show this on the device here. This is a good question.
If you have any questions about these configurations, you can always visit our knowledge base on the Support Campus portal and type in the model or the VLAN, and you will see there are many of our documents that we explain step by step configuring VLAN.
So the question raised from Mr. Moser is what happens with clients that I need to put in a VLAN but they don't support VLAN.
I have to share the screen.
Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Sorry. Now you should see my screen again. So in the switch, in the same VLAN configuration setup, I have the VLAN port setup here. And here I can define the PVID. This is a port VLAN ID. So this is defining the incoming traffic on the incoming untagged traffic on a port. For example, I now take port 5. I give the PVID 5, so VLAN 5. So any incoming traffic to this port, if I now connect my client to port 5 of that switch, I'm in the guest network.
Yeah.
It will be converted to a tagged frame and will then be sent to the firewall.
Okay.
The firewall can just handle tagged traffic. So this is also an important notice. Firewalls can just handle tagged VLAN traffic and are not able to handle untagged traffic. You need to separate this on the switch.
All right. Question answered.
So what else do we have here? No other questions. Thanks for the great feedback, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Really appreciate it.
We will give that to our colleagues, which we normally would stand here, so they know that we are a good substitute. There's one more question we got also in the support portal, which is coming from clients, because we always select an issue that is reported by tickets or by questions from customer.
Exactly.
And that was a often asked question: can I use VLAN on all Zyxel switches?
I think this was already asked in the chat here previously.
Right.
We have so many questions. I'm not sure who has asked this, but the answer is yes and no. So we support VLANs on all our switches. On our managed switches, we can configure VLAN. Our unmanaged switches just forward the tag traffic. Yeah. If we now take a look at a data sheet of one of our unmanaged switch series, like the GS1100, if we scroll down to the performance tab, we can see that VLAN packet pass-through is allowed. Yeah. So the switch will just pass through the VLAN tag traffic, and it will be handled then on the access point or on the firewall. So example, if you have a firewall like we have here, where you have configured the guest VLAN 5, you have an unmanaged switch in between, and you have an access point where you have set the SSID to talk to VLAN 5. The switch in between will just pass through the traffic. It's more or less just comparable with the default Nebula setup.
Yeah, default Nebula setup.
Default Nebula setup is doing the same. And it's just allowing or forwarding all tag traffic.
Yeah. Okay. So just another information about the Tech Talk we lead next time for VPN, 27th of April. I told you already, you can now already sign up. If you log into academy.zyxel.eu, you will find this Tech Talk listed there.
Yeah, you can also already apply for the overnext Tech Talk, which is again about our UTM series. We will show best practices with our firewalls and UTM appliances. We will have episode 3 then in May.
Right. And also the information on our, one more information on value-added services. Value-added services means we can offer to you to configure your device by our CSO team. The technical specialists will then have a configuration with you and a small training that's based on a license that you purchase in our shop. And after an appointment, this communication and configuration will take place.
Yes, you can exactly. You can see this as a private session where we as a technicians are in a call with you as a customer, and we exactly explain what we are doing and why we are doing this. And if there are any open questions from your side, of course, we try to answer them and give you also a training while we are doing the configuration for you.
and then also the advice for our social media. So this video will be uploaded to the Zyxel support channel on YouTube, and you also find actual interesting issues and subject on the LinkedIn channel of Zyxel Support Campus.
Yes, I can always recommend having a look at our knowledge base. Also, if you want to look something up regarding VLAN, we have step-by-step guides here showing exactly what I've done, but also explaining all other possible options here, like untagged traffic a bit more detailed, untagged ports, what scenario can be used. So we have, I think, around 800 to 900 articles now translated into 18 languages. And you can always find something new there, and also get some input of, okay, this is possible, I didn't know that, this might be helpful in my customer environment. So have a look at our support portal.
Okay, so in this point, we are at the end of our Tech Talk, and I would like to thank you for watching us, and I hope you liked the presentation. Thank you very much, Christoph, for the technical part.
Thanks, Horst. Thanks for having me. Thanks.
And see you on the next Tech Talk, and let's see what is VPN and the like. Thank you very much.
Stay safe and see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.